It was nearly midnight when Nadia checked into the old Elmwood Motel, a crumbling building just off a silent, forgotten highway. She was on her way to visit her mother, but fate had other plans. Her car sputtered and died miles from anywhere, leaving her stranded in the oppressive darkness. The old man at the front desk barely looked up from his crossword puzzle when she stumbled in, asking for a room. "Only one left," he grunted, his voice like gravel. "Room 217, end of the hall." He slid a key across the worn counter. It was cold, heavy metal, feeling more like a shackle than a key. When Nadia pushed open the door to room 217, the first thing that hit her was the smeller, thick, cloying mix of mildew and something else. Something vaguely sweet, like decay. The wallpaper was peeling in long, curling strips, like old, sunburnt skin. The air was heavy and still. She dropped her bag on a rickety chair and flicked the switch for the lamp. It flickered once, twice, before casting a sickly, dim glow across the depressing scene. "Just for one night," she muttered to herself, trying to find some comfort in the words as she lay down on the lumpy bed. But then she heard it, a soft, sibilant whisper snaking its way from the air vent above the dresser. At first, she dismissed it as the wind rattling through the old building, a common sound in a place so run down. But then the sound sharpened, coalescing into clear, chilling words that seemed to be spoken directly into her ear. "Don't look under the bed." Nadia froze, every muscle in her body tensing. Her heart began to pound against her ribs like a trapped bird. She sat bolt upright, her eyes wide, staring at the dark grill of the vent. The whisper came again, louder this time, laced with a terrifying urgency. "He's awake." Her hand trembled as she fumbled for her phone on the nightstand. She switched on the flashlight, its bright beam cutting through the gloom. She swept it across the room, the peeling walls, the stained carpet, the grimy window. Nothing. The room was empty, but the air felt different now. It was thick, heavy, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting. She tried to rationalize it. Stress, exhaustion, an overactive imagination. She must have dozed off and dreamed it. Forcing herself to lie back down, she pulled the thin blanket up to her chin. But sleep was a distant shore she couldn't reach. Every creak of the old motel, every rustle of leaves outside, sounded like a footstep, a threat. Eventually, sheer exhaustion won, and she drifted into a restless, shallow sleep, haunted by faceless shadows. She awoke with a jolt. The digital clock on her phone read 2:17 a.m. What woke her wasn't a whisper this time. It was a sound, a soft scratching coming from directly beneath the bed. It wasn't the random scuttling of a mouse. This was rhythmic, deliberate. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause, like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. Her blood ran cold. She held her breath, listening, praying it would stop. It didn't. The sound was methodical, patient. A cold dread crept up her spine, and against every screaming instinct in her body, she knew she had to look. She slowly, so slowly, leaned over the edge of the mattress, peering into the darkness below. The scratching stopped instantly. The silence that followed was somehow worse, more profound. Her own breathing sounded like a roar in her ears. Mustering a sliver of courage she didn't know she possessed, she whispered into the void, her voice barely a tremor. "Hello." A hand shot out from the darkness under the bed. It was pale, impossibly thin, with long, dirty fingernails. It clamped around her wrist in a grip that was both icy cold and inhumanly strong. Nadia screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror. She scrambled backward, kicking and flailing, ripping her wrist free. She slammed hard against the dresser, the impact rattling her bones. Her eyes were fixed on the space under the bed, expecting a monster to crawl out. But there was nothing. When she shakily aimed her phone's flashlight under the bed again, the space was empty. Dust bunnies and shadows, nothing more. Except for a small, folded piece of paper lying innocently in the center of the floor. Her hand shaking violently, she reached down and picked it up. She unfolded it. Written in a shaky, spidery handwriting were 5 terrifying words. "If you hear the whisper, it's already too late." Panic seized her. This was no dream. This was real. She had to get out now. She scrambled to the door, her heart hammering, and fumbled with the lock. It turned, she heard the click, but when she grabbed the handle and pushed, it wouldn't budge. It was as if the door were welded shut. She rattled it, pushed with all her weight, but it was useless. She was trapped. Then a glint of metal, or rather, the lack of it caught her eye. She glanced back at the nightstand where she'd left the key. It was gone, and the whisper returned. No longer from the vent, but from right behind her. A cold breath on the back of her neck. "Don't turn around." Tears streamed down her face, blurring her vision. The air in the room plunged, becoming icy cold, and goosebumps erupted all over her skin. Her gaze darted to the cracked mirror hanging over the dresser, and in its murky reflection, she saw it. A figure, tall, shrouded in black, with a head that was a smooth, featureless void, standing right behind her shoulder. She spun around, letting out another choked cry, and the room was empty again. She was utterly, terrifyingly alone. The rest of the night passed in a blur of silent, petrified tears as she sat huddled in the corner, staring at the door, waiting for the sun. When the first weak rays of morning light finally filtered through the grimy curtains, she heard a soft click. The door swung open on its own. She didn't hesitate. She bolted from the room, down the hall, and burst into the lobby, trembling from head to toe. She slammed what she thought was the key onto the counter. "Someone was in my room." She cried, her voice ragged. "Something attacked me." The old man looked up, his brow furrowed in confusion. That's not possible," he whispered, his voice shaking. He pointed a trembling finger down the hall. "Room 217 has been sealed shut for 30 years. Ever since the last guest disappeared." Nadia's eyes followed his finger. She looked down the long, dim hallway. The door at the very end, the one she had just run from, was covered in thick wooden boards and wrapped in heavy, rusted chains. A large, weathered padlock secured it shut. Her blood turned to ice. She looked down at her hand, which she thought had just held the key. The key was gone. In its place, clutched in her palm, was a small, folded piece of paper. She opened it. The message was different this time. Check in anytime, but you never really leave.